Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. The coming winter remains a concern, with recent events in the Baltic Sea and in the Ukraine highlighting the vulnerability of Europe's gas and power transport systems. This week's episode discusses the outlook for wholesale electricity markets in the Nordic region and on the continent. We've seen rain in the Nordics, but is it enough to keep prices low in the winter months? And in continental Europe, questions remain over the availability of nuclear reactors in France and Germany. Helping me, Richard Sverrisson, to discuss these issues and a whole lot more are Marcus Eriksson and Ole Tom Djupskås, both power market experts at Refinitiv. A warm welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you about recent events in the Baltic and the Ukraine. Are there concerns about the vulnerability of European energy infrastructure, Marcus?
Well, I guess it's always concerns when it comes to the geopolitical situation we have today. The reactions from the market, what we have seen and what the consequences are, that we have the very high prices from a market perspective, and we have a shortage of supply in Europe, which is also affected by the sanctions and the stop of inflow of Russian gas, which has also turned to that Europe is changing from going back in a way from gas to coal again, because we need that in order to guarantee the supply that we need.
Absolutely. I mean, we can see that a lot of the coal power. If you've got a coal-fired power plant, you're burning in. You're keeping it running at full power. Yeah.
To some extent, as long as you can, but that also come with some challenges, of course, in Europe, because you have had over the years the outphasing of coal, and when you have outphasing of conventional power plants over a longer time, it is not just to turn the switch on and introduce them again in a fast manner, so to say.
No, exactly. It's a little bit more complex than that. Ole Tom, if I can turn to you, let's talk a little bit about the situation in the Nordic region. I mean, it's raining here, or it has been raining. Is this a welcome sign for the hydrological balance and the sort of hydrological stocks in the Nordic region? Are we out of the woods now? Is this a good sign?
It's a really good sign. Yeah. We are in a much better situation now than just 2 weeks ago. Then the Nordic hydro balance was at minus 15 TVH, including the 15-day weather forecast. And end of September and October has brought a lot of rain. So we received above 6 TVH in the week, 6 TVH above normal, actually, precipitation energy in week 39 and 40. And we expect 4.3 TVH above normal in this week, next week, and the week after. So that is 10.5 TVH above normal for those 5 weeks. And the hydro balance today, including a 15-day weather forecast, is minus 4 TVH. So it's a significant improvement.
Okay, so as well as getting out the umbrellas and the rain gear, we'll also be seeing prices come down, Ole Tom.
Yeah, because this improvement has mainly taken place in NO2 and NO5.
Which regions for those listeners who are unaware of those abbreviations?
Yeah, sorry. NO2 is southernmost parts of Norway, and NO5 is western Norway. Also, to some extent, in NO1, which is eastern parts of Norway. So southern Norway has received the rain. So we can look a little bit more at southern Norway. So by the end of week 36, around 11th of September. our estimated hydro balance in southern Norway was minus 18 TVH. And that's rather critical, I would say, worse than last year. And almost 5 TVH below normal of snow and soil. It was very dry in the ground. And by the end of next week, we expect the hydro balance in southern Norway to be minus 7.5 TVH. And the snow and soil reservoir has improved from minus 5 TVH to 0.5 TVH above normal. So it's
that's generally very positive.
Very positive. 5 TVH above the situation last year. Yeah.
So in comparison to sort of previous years, Ole Tom, is this sort of about normal? I mean, 2021, 2020.
It's better than last year, but I guess it's still the among the worst in the last 10 years or so. Okay. It's better than last year at least.
Okay, so but what does that mean for prices?
We can have a look at the water values in NO2. They are very much down.
So when you say the water value, this is if you're saying the actual monetary value of the water in the reservoirs, or just explain to the listeners.
Yeah, the water values. It's what the hydro producers want to sell their water at. Yeah, the value they put on the water. Last Monday, it was around 300 euros in southern Norway if they want, for a certain amount of sold volume. But for tomorrow, it's around 185 euros. So it's a significant decrease, I would say. And we also see that the prices in those areas are now lower than Germany. Some weeks ago, September, it was very, very on the same level as Germany, but now we export much more to Germany again.
And hope potentially those prices could come down even further as long as the precipitation comes down in rain and not in snow. But if I can turn to you, Marcus, and ask, so the situation seems to be improving in the Nordics, more rain, prices coming down. What's the situation on the continent, and particularly, the key markets of Germany and France?
Yeah, so the key markets, it's a lot of factors that plays in there. You have on both. You have a lot of risk factors, so to say, and you have on the supply side. If we discuss just the conventional power, you have in Germany what is happening in January, that the nuclear phase out. That has been known for a long time, but of course that really has an effect in the tight situation we are in. So that is 4 gigawatt of nuclear power that goes out, which is a big part of the stack with stable supply. Then it's uncertainty whether coal plants can be reintroduced, because that has it comes with technical difficulties and revamping. Is all of that? Is it possible? And we don't really have clear answers to that, but there is discussions of restarting, so to say, some coal plants in Germany and also one in France. So that is an uncertainty there. And in addition, you of course have the weather risk, so to say, because you have in Germany in particular, you have a very big portion of the so-called stack, that everything that should cover the demand is coming from renewable supply. And in particular, when we're turning into winter, it's the wind supply. But that is very hard to predict far into the future. You can predict it pretty well for the first up to 10 days, but then the uncertainty in the forecast becomes high. and the variations that you can see from like renewable generations is the variation is in the range of 10 to 30 gig. And then one should, just to get some reference for that number, is that around 35 gigs, that's the total demand in all of the Nordics. And on a yearly average. And in Germany, the demand level, so to say, that you need to cover is on a yearly average is around 55 gigs. But of course, in the peak hours, like the most intensive hours, like during the middle of the day and the morning hours, then the demand level is up to like 80 and sometimes up to 100 gig in both Germany and in France. So it's a big portion, the renewable supply, which comes with a lot of uncertainty.
So, I mean, what does that mean for prices then, Marcus? What kind of price spread do you think we could see if you have a range of 10 to 35 gigawatts in both those markets? If we take Germany as an example, what could that mean? I mean, we're often, the Dunkelflaute, which is used in Germany to describe the dark, cold winter days with no wind that we've talked about before on this podcast. What could that do to prices, as well as if you have much more wind, which you say is hard to predict?
The price spread that we see in those in both Germany and France is very high. We talk it's in the range of several hundred euros. So I think it's in Germany, it's around the potential spread that we can see depending on different wind scenarios is around 600 euros. So it's a lot. And it is, of course, a consequence of like a very tight supply. So the price is very reactive to changes on the both supply and the demand side. But if we increase the demand slightly, needs more supply, then the prices, they are increasing rather fast.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? So maybe, 3-4 years ago, that kind of spread would have been completely unthinkable. But given the events of the last sort of 6 months, that's actually, we've seen those, not quite in the course of a day, but certainly in the course of a week.
Yeah. It's, of course, if one just look back, I don't know, 4 years or something like that, maybe, then we were talking prices between 0 and 100 euros in Germany. Now we are talking prices between 100 up to, I don't know exactly, 600-700 euros in the worst case. So it's a completely different situation, and it comes of course from several factors. It's also that the gas price has increased a lot. So the fuel price in itself is much more expensive than it used to be. And then the lack of availability, that is another thing. Then, of course, one could think that, we have a lot more renewable. Of course we have. The renewable supply is much better now than before. But that is also something we see when we have good renewable generation. That is covering a lot in these situations. But the problem is that we don't always have renewable generation. We don't always have wind. And when we have no wind, we end up having no generation. And when we then have a small conventional stack, with conventional stack, I mean controllable thermal generation, like coal, lignite, gas, and so on. When that one, and nuclear, when that one has narrowed down, then of course we end up in this very price-sensitive situation.
Absolutely. So we could either be saved by the wind or be very badly hit by the lack of wind. Ole, Tom, if I can turn to you, the reservoirs are filling, the sort of hydro balance, the hydro stocks of water in the Nordic region is increasing. Does this mean that the political discussions are becoming less heated? We talked about rationing before the summer or during the summer. Is that now being discussed at a political level?
Well, I think the risk of rationing now is very low. I guess that's the only thing I want to say. But with these really high precip amounts now, I think the risk is low.
What about on the continent, Marcus? Because there's been talk of gas market, like the German government stepping in to decide who gets what. Is this more likely than before?
You have this different approaches on what should they do. And I think the discussion has been like capping prices and so on. That will have an impact on the price. For example, we have in Spain where you have a gas cap, and introducing a gas cap, so suppose that you would do it all over Europe, that would, of course, it will change the margin. That is sure, and could potentially then lower the price. But the downside of it, or if one should call it that, but what also could happen is that you lose the incentive to do demand saving. And that is actually something that really is needed. What we can call demand destruction, or cutting the demand level, basically.
Have we? I mean, if I stick with the demand destruction, Ole, Tom, I've talked to sort of representatives of industry on this podcast before, and they've been very concerned about the level of demand destruction, or the potential for demand destruction in the Nordics. Is that now also sort of off the table, or is that how likely are we to see that in the region?
I think that's on the table. What we see in our models is that it's around 6-7% lower demand now in southern Norway, and we see the same kind of figures in Sweden and Finland. So 6-7% lower than in a normal year with normal prices.
And on the continent, Marcus?
Yes, we also see it there. In France and Germany, the demand destruction compared to kind of a normal situation is around 3%, as it is today, 3 to 4%, which is quite a lot. And then, which has not been implemented yet to the market, it's the discussion that we should reduce the demand by 5% in the 10% most energy intensive hours. So basically in the hours, say around the morning peak and evening peak, so 8 in the morning and around 7 in the evening, and the hours around there. That's when the demand level is as its highest points. So there we should reduce the demand, and that is very important to do when one look at security of supply, because we have done tests when it comes to how many hours where we have basically where supply will not meet demand. So we will have a power cut. That amount of hours reduces significantly with this demand destruction, and also the demand, the requirement that we need to cut demand. But it's, of course, this is really not an easy task, because maybe one hear that the average, as I said before, the average demand is between 50 and 60 gigs in Germany or in France. But if we take, for example, in France, on a cold winter day, then the demand level can be up to 100 gig. So cutting maybe 5 or even more, 10% of that, like 5 gig or 10 gig of demand, cutting 10 gig, that corresponds to approximately, say, 10 nuclear plants. So of course that, what I would say, has a big impact on the industry.
And it's likely to be mandatory rather than voluntary in these
Yes.
situations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Marcus, I know you're Swedish, but I'm going to ask Ole Tom about the Swedish situation,
Yes,
if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
If you don't mind. So, Ole Tom, the capacity situation in South Sweden. Now, I think, for example, you could maybe talk us through what the situation is like ahead of the winter. But the Swedish government wants to sort of bring back sort of mothballed CHP plants, combined heat and power plants, and the Swedish TSO we see is planning to make deals with some producers. What will the impact be on spot prices in southern Sweden?
The weather is decisive, I would say, for the demand here. So that's a really important factor. It's surely not optimal that Ringhals 4, which is normally outputting 1100 megawatt, is out until end of January. I guess there is some risk as well for a prolonged outage there, since the yearly maintenance has been extended 3 times. But it's important to avoid supply disruptions in the Baltics, Poland and Finland for sure.
Absolutely. And if I can ask you a question about the latter country there, Ole Tom, there's a lot of question marks remain about the return the commercial startup, the final startup of Olkiluoto 3. What are your expectations here? We've seen it in recent days. It's been delayed again. The startup has been delayed again. What's your view? Will it come on December? Will it save the day?
Our assumption is that normal production will start on the 14th of December. That's our assumption in our price modeling. This date was changed last week from 10th of December, but it has stayed rather unchanged, I would say, since June. However, there is a quite long period now with 0 megawatt output, lasting from, I think, 13th of October to end of October. That was not there some weeks ago, I think. So there is some uncertainty for sure. But the output is expected to resume at close to 1600 for most of November. There are many tests that remain to be done. I think 10 tests or so. They say that 9 have been done earlier at lower output levels, and there's 1 new test. So for sure there is risk for a longer outage. And we just did a price scenario run actually with Olkiluoto 3 out from next week and until 1st of March. And that increased the system price estimate with €6 for November and December and 8.5 euros for Q1. And the price in Finland went up 16-17 euros for December and Q1.
Ole Tom, if I can ask you as well, we talked a little bit about rationing and a little about the political situation in Norway specifically. But on the European level, we're seeing lots of market intervention measures, price caps, taxes on windfall profits, both at the European level and at national level. In Norway, there's been a lot of, financial support given to households. There's talk, of extending it to businesses, etc. What has all the discussion around our market intervention and the measures so far imposed, what effect has it had on liquidity and on energy trading in general?
I think maybe the price level is the most important factor limiting the trading level. But we can talk a little bit about the windfall tax or the higher price contribution tax for hydro and wind producers, which is proposed to be in place from 28th of September. So as I've understood it, a hydropower plant gets 23% tax on their achieved prices above 67 euros. And if the producer has hedged some of the expected production volume, this is taking into account when estimating the average achieved price, but only financial contracts done before 28th of September. So if you sell additional volumes in the financial market at, for example, 250 euros for a specific period, the average price, if you do that now, the average price that is used to estimate the windfall tax is the same. So your tax will be the same. And so you introduce a risk for your income, but not for your tax. So I think since this increases the tax risk, we do not believe that this will lead to increased trading activity, for sure.
Probably quite the reverse in some ways, yeah. So, but if I can and stick with some, if we look beyond this winter, the first half of 2023, we had the Norwegian budget recently, Ole Tom. How does that impact sort of the capacity increases or on the supply side for the mid to long term?
Yeah, we have some signals from different hydro producers that they don't want to finance any new projects and stuff like that due to the increased tax on resource rent, and also probably this windfall tax or this high price contribution tax, as they call it. So it doesn't look too good, I would say, for the longer term capacity expansion.
And Sweden plans in its new government, there's talk about new nuclear coming online, but that's no quick fix either, is it?
I haven't read so much about that, but no, that's no quick fix for sure.
If the other examples, Finland and France, are anything to go by with new reactors, or the UK as well for that matter, then it's not something that you do overnight, is it really, Marcus?
No, I think in general, when it comes to the conclusion that we need more conventional power, it's probably right, but it's not something that if you take the decision today, it's not like you're going to have a new thermal plant up and running by next week or so. It's you're talking several years often, because there's a lot of regulations and it should be money to get it done. And it's a high uncertainty in it, of course.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if I can just finish off by asking Marcus, how both of you, how long do you think this crisis will last?
Well, I think in Europe it will. It's very hard to say because it will be very weather dependent as well. But when looking a bit forward, the coal reduction in Germany is, I mean, as it is now, it's intended to continue, but then what will happen in that sense? But in one way, what one knows is that the renewable supply will be improved. Then I think the whole market, the whole situation, the solution in the short term, in my opinion at least, it's that we need to lower the demand. So, but also if we maybe after this winter has learned a way to cope with reducing the demand in a good way, that is also maybe something that will come into play in the coming years. It's particular in the winter because that's when we have the real problems, that we have the high demand levels. So
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. I did put you a bit on the spot there, but how about you, Ole Tom? How long
I was
do you
just
think
looking at the market, and it seems like the market expects the crisis to end sometime in 2024.
Okay.
Just see the prices in the Nordic is down to 89 euros in 2024, and also in Germany it's pretty much it's a significant decrease, I would say, from 437 euros in 2023 and 270 in 2024. So, yeah.
Is the market right, though? What do you think? What's your view?
I guess last year at this time of year, it was not right because they had a very falling forward curve, right? They believed in dropping prices this year, if I remember correctly, and then the contracts further out started to rise. Might happen again, but yeah, I hope they're right this time, that it ends in at least 2024.
So fingers crossed anyway, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being guests on the Montel Weekly Podcast this week. Ole Tom and Marcus Eriksson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So listeners, you can now follow the podcast on our own Twitter account, aptly named the Montel Weekly Podcast. Please direct message any suggestions, questions, or, let us know if you think you have a good idea for a guest on the show. You can also send us an email to podcast@montelnews.com. Lastly, remember to keep up to date with all that's happening in energy markets on Montel News. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you and goodbye.